Good evening. It looks like we are having our attendees coming in. We're going to spend a couple more minutes just making sure we get everyone who has registered for this event into the session. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Looks like we still have some people coming in. We're going to wait just a little bit longer and make sure everyone who has registered is with us before we begin. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. All right, I think we are going to begin. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Mary Gore, and I am the proud superintendent of District 57. This will be my 14th year in District 57. I started my career here as the principal of Westbrook School, and I served in that role for 8 years before joining the central office team for 2 years as the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. And this will be my 4th year as the superintendent. So tonight I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Jason Kays, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later in tonight's presentation. His role is the assistant superintendent for finance and operations. He also served as the Lincoln Middle School principal years ago, so he has a great perspective of the district from these different vantage points. And we're also joined by Alan Armbruster, who is a representative from STR Architecture Firm, which is the District 57 architecture team. He also is the proud alum of Lincoln Middle School and a current District 57 resident. So Alan is with us tonight and may be jumping in depending on the nature of the questions we receive. I'm also joined by Heather Salerno, who's with us virtually. She will be managing the questions that come in throughout tonight's presentation, which brings me to how to ask questions. Tonight, we are going to be in presentation mode. So if you have questions that you would like us to address during our question and answer portion, please make sure that you submit those questions, which you can find in the question and answer tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So anything that comes up, you might think of something during the presentation, feel free to jot down questions at that time. You can submit them. Heather will be busy compiling those, and I will see the questions. My colleague Jason will see the questions, and Alan, so we'll be sure to address those. Tonight, we really are eager to share information about District 57, particularly as it relates to the challenges that we're facing, but also the opportunities, of course. And we also want to be sure to hear from you. You represent the stakeholders of our school district, which we understand is far more than just those who have kids who attend our schools. Our goal in doing these public engagement sessions is to really reach as wide of a community as we can. And so we really appreciate you being with us tonight. There will be one last public engagement session, which will be held on next Monday in the evening at 6 o'clock at Westbrook School. So we'll be putting out information on our social media and various other channels that we use, but we could always use your help getting that word out to your neighbors, your friends and family who live in our community. We love to spread this information through word of mouth. So thank you so much in advance if you're able to help us. And with that, I'll get started. So District 57 is a smaller, relatively community-based district where each child really receives such personalized attention and the support that they need to be successful, not only as they transition to become high school students, but also in their lives beyond high school. Our community partners every day together to inspire our students every day to reach their full potential. Last year, the Board of Education officially adopted a new 5-year strategic plan, which was the proud product of a lot of work through stakeholder committees to develop a comprehensive vision, mission, and related work items that will be achieved over the next 5 years. And all of our work is really grounded in this vision of every student every day reaching their full potential. We believe that the family feel of our school district and this individualized approach to meeting each child's needs creates the type of special environment in which our students can truly thrive. We do face challenges, and particularly one related to legislation that came out of Springfield last August, which was Governor Pritzker signing into law that full-day kindergarten will be required in all Illinois schools by 2027. Now, full-day kindergarten is actually an initiative that already was included in our strategic plan just maybe a month before this announcement. However, the implementation date of 2027 was not something that we had previously expected to be able to achieve due to the significant amount of resources, both financial and personnel related, to deliver such programming in District 57. But as it stands right now, this law, which is an unfunded mandate from Illinois State Board of Education, is requiring schools, districts like Mount Prospect to deliver full-day kindergarten by the beginning of the 2027 school year. It's important to state that when comparing to our neighboring school districts, District 57 is the only school district that by this fall in our area will not be delivering full-day programming for kindergarten. District 25, District 26, District 59, District 63, all 62. These are all districts in our area that do deliver full-day kindergarten. Many of them have delivered for many years this programming. There is District 23, which is Prospect Heights, that does not offer full-day programming and is currently trying to do so similar to our district. So of the districts that feed into Prospect High School, we will be the only school district that does not offer full-day kindergarten. We also know and have heard from our community that there are other areas that need to be addressed in District 57. We have the largest class sizes of any of our peer districts. You can see in the graphic here that Mount Prospect, as of I believe 2022, this data reflects the comparison data of class sizes. We also have classrooms and science labs in our school district that really have been largely unchanged since they were originally built in 1970, which is truly a limitation in the way that our wonderful teachers can deliver high quality instruction based on the limitations of space. And sadly, a lot of instruction and small group work, therapy, interventions, these things are occurring in hallways and stairwells in many of our schools, but it is most dramatic at Westbrook and Lincoln, where we have the greatest challenges around our spaces. Moreover, we do not have dedicated spaces that are, really designed for innovative and STEM programming. When we say STEM, we're referring to science, technology, engineering, and mathematical education. At Westbrook, our art and music classrooms are delivered in mobile classrooms, which has been the case for many years. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, we really don't have adequate spaces for small group instruction and therapy, which is really detrimental to the experiences of our students. Our gyms are too small and our locker rooms are antiquated. Two of our schools, Westbrook and Lincoln Middle School, do not have fire sprinklers, which is the result of the year in which these schools were built and the school code at the time of that construction did not require fire sprinklers, which should indicate just how old these buildings are. It's hard to fathom a time where school code in Illinois wouldn't require fire sprinklers as a mandatory item for a school, and yet two of our schools in District 57 do not have this feature. Which reminds me to share that the schools that we often refer to as our new schools, Lyons Park and Fairview, are 30 years old. So just by context, that gives you kind of an appreciation for just how old some of these buildings are. And for that reason, we continue to face significant accessibility challenges at our schools, specifically our older schools, Westbrook and Lincoln. Not to mention infrastructure in these buildings and mechanicals that are quite costly and continue to become very expensive for us to maintain as they reach end of life status. We are proud to have the reputation as being one of the most fiscally conservative districts in our region, and that we accomplish more with less. By far, we spend less money than our peer districts. You can see in this data from 2022, the way that we compare in our per pupil spending. And this has been a trend for District 57 for many years. We're proud to operate with a balanced budget every year. And we're also very proud of our commitment to transparency. One example of this is a commitment to our Citizens Finance Advisory Committee, a group that is made up of stakeholders, parents, staff members, administrators, school board member, even a former District 57 student, who regularly meet to review district financial information, hear from our financial consultants, and regularly provide information and recommendation to the Board of Education. This initiative really reflects the commitment of District 57 to work in collaboration with our stakeholders and also in a manner that's transparent. The reality is that due to our limited funding available compared to our surrounding districts, we are not able to provide full-day kindergarten simply from our reserve money. And not to mention the other improvements that are needed in District 57. In order to do these things and provide full-day kindergarten, we need to have additional funding. If we don't have this additional funding, District 57 would be forced to look at other ways for achieving additional revenue. And that would likely require increasing our class sizes, expanding the use of our mobile classrooms, which none of us would want to see, which as it creates more safety concerns, and also pulling resources from other places like our athletic programming, our music and art programming, just to name a few. That's why we're here tonight and engaging in this work of working with our stakeholders. It's absolutely critical that we come together to develop a fiscally responsible plan to address these challenges. We do have the opportunity in this work to provide our youngest students with a wonderful comprehensive kindergarten experience that reflects the commitment that our neighboring districts have made. We believe that kids in District 57 really will thrive having a full day of kindergarten. And we also believe that district-wide, there is a need to improve our learning environments, to increase our student achievement, and meet the needs of each child now and into the future. It really comes down to this. District 57 kids deserve the same quality educational experiences that is available to the kids in neighboring districts. Through this transparent, collaborative process, we hope to identify the key improvements that the community, our stakeholders wish to make in our schools, resulting in a plan that will really illuminate the future for our district. So in doing this, we have 4 separate phases of community achievement or engagement, excuse me. In each phase, there is an opportunity for feedback from our stakeholders. And I'm going to pause right now to just remind you that if you are having any questions that are coming up as I share this information, please put it in the question and answer tab, the bottom of your screen, so that we can be sure to address questions that you have later in this presentation. Phase 1 began with asking our community, how would you like us to proceed? What are our schools doing well? What challenges do our schools face? And what changes and improvements would you like to see for our schools? We were eager to receive this feedback and encouraged that we had just over 300 community members share their feedback in phase 1. If you're interested in the feedback that we received for phase 1, you can find it in the District 57 website, where we have a page devoted to our community engagement process. We're currently in phase 2, which began in June and involves these public engagement sessions. Tonight is the 3rd of 4, and these opportunities will also illuminate the feedback that participants will have through a survey that you will complete tonight. We also have engaged in a public phone survey, which concluded, I believe, last week. And that data from the phone survey is in the process of being compiled and will then be analyzed and presented to the Board of Education at their July 18th meeting, along with data that is obtained from the survey you will have the opportunity to take tonight. The goal really is to get as much input as possible from as many sources within our community to provide a really data-driven process for the Board of Education and Administration. Now I'm going to transition to the second part of our presentation, during which my colleague, Dr. Kays, will be presenting different improvements and different possible pathways, as well as associated costs. He'll tell you a bit more about each of these items and give you information about how to complete the feedback form at the end of this presentation. We're about halfway through, so if you need to sign off and don't have an opportunity to complete the survey, please know that tonight's presentation is being recorded and will be put right on the District 57 webpage, where we are storing our community engagement work. And I encourage you to check back for that recording, as well as share it with friends and neighbors after tonight, so that they're able to learn the information that we're sharing tonight. So I'll be back in a little bit once we open it up to our question and answer portion. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jason.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Just a reminder again, use that Q&A as we're going through the second half of this presentation. So the second half of this presentation really is broken up into 3 different parts. We're going to be looking at, through the feedback we've received in phase 1, we're going to be looking at different individual projects in order to understand where the support lies. We're also going to be looking at infrastructure solutions and different funding levels. So we're going to look at 3 different parts. Before we jump into this next part, just a note that really this is conceptual in nature. We've looked at this from a very high level. And so when you see estimated costs, know that they're not, we haven't gotten down yet to specifics. That's save for the next phase. For now, we're looking at it from a very high level. This first part is going to be looking at the individual projects, and each project will come with an estimated cost. But please understand also that we know that there are efficiencies that can happen when if 2 different projects may have some costs that might be a part of both projects. So just understand as we're looking through, but we're really looking at each individual project as we go. So here are the 10 different individual projects we'll be looking at tonight. They're in no particular order, and like I said, we're going to look at them really individually in nature, and each project has its own slide. So we're going to start with full day kindergarten. Full day kindergarten is something we're looking at. As Dr. Gore said, we are looking at it through our strategic plan, but also the state mandate has definitely at least hurried up our timeline a bit. And so when we look at completing this project, the advantages besides compliance with that state mandate is the increase of that academic and social emotional learning for our youngest learners. So two advantages there for sure. The disadvantage, definitely is the cost. And the cost that you see tonight, the cost that we'll be talking about are all for the facilities. So we understand that, full day kindergarten means additional staff, and that is a separate cost, but the costs we're looking at tonight are all for facilities. So at the bottom, the estimated cost on the slide of $19.2 million for full day kindergarten covers the facility needs that we have at Westbrook in order to allow for full day kindergarten. The second project that we're talking about is classroom improvements. All right, classroom improvements at Lincoln. And so what we're talking about is Lincoln was built, the newest part of Lincoln was finished about 50 years ago, and the original part was finished about 75 years ago. And so the classrooms were built at that time for learning at that time. But we know that modern classrooms have the ability to allow for students to have hands-on opportunities, to collaborate, to really have more of a learning space that allows for the learning of today. And so we would be looking at how we could do that within the Lincoln classrooms. A lot of that would be done through expansion or new construction with an estimated cost of $17.6 million. And I should note that the pictures you see tonight, and you'll definitely notice on our next slide, are pictures not of our current buildings, but pictures of possibilities that we have. The third project we're going to be looking at are innovative spaces, and this would be at all 4 buildings. So the first one was Westbrook, the second one was Lincoln. This would be looking at all 4 buildings and really trying to modernize some of those specific media centers or our STEM labs and tech classrooms. And so at our media centers, they were built years ago and were doing their job of what learning looked like back then. But now with design thinking, with collaboration within the classroom, with different opportunities for students to really work with each other and get those hands-on experiences, we need to look at what that learning space can be for those students. And so it would be extensive renovations that would be needed at each of the buildings with an estimated cost of $9.4 million. Music and art spaces, Dr. Gore talked about the fact that at Westbrook, currently our music and art spaces are happening within mobile classrooms. The spaces, besides being a mobile classroom, are not dedicated for music and art. So they are just typical classrooms. And we know that music and art spaces really have needs beyond what a typical classroom might offer. And so we'd be looking at expansion or new construction at Westbrook to allow for music and art to be within specific classrooms for that learning with an estimated cost of $3.2 million. Athletics. So at Lincoln, a couple different things we'll be looking at. One is expanded gymnasiums. So Lincoln currently has two gymnasiums. Both are on the smaller side. There isn't an opportunity for the entire student body to be in the gymnasium. So when they do any type of assemblies, it is at the most by grade level as they gather students together. It's just not large enough for the whole student body. It also isn't an ideal space for learning when you think about 60 or 90 students in a gym that's just not built for that many students at a time. And so it doesn't allow for the learning or the exercise or the opportunities for the students that we really want. In addition, we've been looking at a track at Lincoln. The track team at Lincoln is award-winning, has been going to state for since before I was principal, so going back more than 10, 12, 13 years, and really every year does a great job. Our issues are that tracks are just hard to come by now. We used to use Prospect often. Prospect has more opportunities for their students, especially in the spring, doesn't allow us to use their track. So it's great for their students, it's great for them. It just unfortunately doesn't work so great for us. And so we continue to look at opportunities for what tracks are out there, but is something that we've been looking at, as well as improving, I said the gym space and then the locker rooms as well. And so looking at all of that would be an estimated cost of $10.75 million. At Westbrook and Lincoln, student resources and support. So as Dr. Gore mentioned, we have a real hard time with space at both of these buildings. At Westbrook, students are often looking at small group opportunities, whether it's speech therapy or reading and math support happening in stairwells or the landings near stairs or in hallways. Not ideal for the students, not ideal for the learning that's happening. And so something we've definitely been looking at. It's just we are right now just over capacity when it comes to Westbrook and what we can offer within all the classroom and learning spaces. So that same thing over at Lincoln, as we look at small group opportunities, as co-teachers, teachers might be bringing small groups of students out of the classroom to learn in a different space. There isn't a space for them to go. They may go to the library where another classroom happens to be already there. So it's not ideal. So we are looking at how we can offer that and really for the better learning opportunities for our students. And the estimated cost, and that would be through expansion or new construction, both at Westbrook and Lincoln, estimated cost of $3.2 million. Lunchroom and multi-purpose spaces. So different needs at the two buildings of Lincoln and Westbrook, but both are big needs. At Lincoln, the cafeteria is below grade. It is small for the number of students that will come down there at a time. It has low ceilings. It's not, the layout doesn't allow for the kitchen to be next to where the food is served based on where the bathrooms are. So not an ideal layout or space for Lincoln. And so we would look at building through new construction, a new cafeteria at Lincoln. At Westbrook, the cafeteria, which triples as a cafeteria and a gymnasium and can be an auditorium at times. It's the one large group space at Westbrook and doesn't allow, as we look for full day kindergarten, obviously that would be more students eating lunch during the day. So we need to look at that, but also it doesn't allow for more gym classes at Westbrook because the gym is used for lunch in the middle of every day and before and after to set up and take down. So really limits our space opportunities at Westbrook. And so that would be done through new construction with an estimated cost of $10.2 million. Infrastructure and mechanicals. So this is another one that would impact all four buildings. Although Fairview and Lions Park are, as Dr. Gore said, are newer buildings at 30 years. There are parts that are, getting towards the end of life for our infrastructure. And so this would be looking though at things like roofs. Lincoln and Westbrook, we've been talking about the roofs for a little while now. Also for HVAC needs and the exterior shell, different things like that at all the buildings. So it's not always the most glamorous things, but it's definitely the things that need to be done to keep the building running. And so the estimated cost for that at all 4 buildings would be $22.4 million total for the 4 buildings. Safety and security. So we have been doing a lot with safety and security in the past couple of years through a security audit that we did, but there is definitely room for more needs that we have at our buildings. Dr. Gore mentioned at Lincoln and Westbrook, the fire sprinklers that weren't part of code when the schools were built, but something that we would be interested in obviously having. Fairview and Lions Park do have sprinklers. Fairview and Lions Park do have sprinklers. Westbrook and Lincoln do not. So that is something we'd be looking at those buildings, as well as tornado shelters at the buildings. And so the estimated cost for those items, $19.2 million. And the last one for these projects, the 10th project, space circulation and layout. And so this is an issue. I'll talk specifically at Lincoln first. At Lincoln, the building kept getting added onto, and there are parts of the building that are very narrow with some tight staircases as well. If you've been there, or, students who have gone there, we know that we have an upstairs and a down staircase because of just how narrow those stairs are. But all the students in the back of the building need to go through this narrow passage in order to get to the front of the building. The back of the building has a library and one of the gyms. The front of the building has the cafeteria and the other gym. So students are moving through that corridor very often. That's just one example of something at Lincoln that we would be looking at. Westbrook, same idea of looking at how student flow goes through the building. And then something else we'd be looking at Lincoln would be the flow of traffic as well. If you've ever been around Lincoln, anytime between 235 and 255 probably, you can see the flow and how traffic, or the lack of flow, I should say, of traffic at Lincoln. And so something we're looking at as well. Estimated cost for this to happen would be $7.3 million. So those are the 10 projects that we'll be looking at. And when we get to the survey and we'll talk about it, we'll be asking for your opinions on those 10 projects separate from what we're about to talk about. So now we're going to talk about infrastructure solutions. And we have 3 different options for infrastructure solutions. And again, each option has its own slide. So I'm going to walk through. Each option, we are looking at completing an expansion at Westbrook with full-day kindergarten being a mandate from the state. So we are looking at that, and really it's a question then of what are we doing in the rest of the district, specifically at Lincoln. And so in this first option, we'd be looking at that expansion at Westbrook to accomplish full-day kindergarten. And then we'd be looking at Lincoln to do the most urgent renovations. Really, it's looking at Lincoln and saying, what needs to get done now in order for the building to continue to house students over the next 10 to 20 years. And so we'd be looking at those urgent renovations and getting those done. The disadvantages of this option, of course, are we're not getting everything that we've been looking at in all those projects. And as we do just some projects, right, things get more expensive as we wait, longer. The estimated cost for this infrastructure option is $33.6 million. The next option is looking at an addition and expansion. So again, we'll have that expansion at Westbrook to accommodate full-day kindergarten. And at Lincoln, we'd be looking at doing an addition with renovations then of the existing portion of Lincoln. And so the advantages, again, of course, we'll be doing the kindergarten as well as getting many of the improvements we're looking at. The disadvantages, it's more expensive for sure. And some of the improvements that we were looking at, we wouldn't be able to do all of them, but some of them. The estimated cost for this option would be $88.1 million. And the third option we'd be looking at would be a new school and expansion. And this option, again, expansion at Westbrook for that full-day kindergarten. And then at Lincoln, we'd be looking at a new school. It would achieve everything that we've talked about, all of the things we desire, but it is the most expensive option at $97.1 million. So again, as we get to the survey, that will be the second portion of the survey, and we'll walk through it once I'm done with the third portion. The third portion is looking at potential funding levels. And so there are 4 different funding levels that we're looking at. The first level is no new funding, really looking at how to accomplish full-day kindergarten within our existing budget. As Dr. Gore mentioned, it may be taking resources from other places, which sometimes will impact extracurriculars. It may impact class size, or pulling resources from other programs. But it wouldn't have an impact on taxpayers. We would have to work within our current budget. So obviously that's the lowest funding model, because it's no new funding. We then have our low funding level, which would allow for us to meet the state mandate for full day kindergarten, as well as do some improvements at Lincoln. Its approximate funding amount of $33.6 million. And as you can see on the slide, it gives the approximate average tax impact. And you'll see a range, because it does depend how long you go out for the bonds. It can be 20 to 30 years. That's what that range represents. And so it'd have an impact of $280 to $335 per year on a home worth $375,000. The medium funding level would be meeting that state mandate of full day kindergarten, as well as many improvements at Lincoln. The approximate funding amount would be $88.1 million, with an estimated average tax impact of $739 to $884 on that same home. And the final funding level, the high funding level, would meet that state mandate for full day kindergarten, as well as do all the improvements we've been talking about. The approximate funding amount would be $97.1 million, with that average tax impact approximately $815 to $974 per year on that $375,000 home. So again, 3 different parts that we're going to be talking about now. It's the projects, those 10 projects, the 3 infrastructure options, and then the 4 funding levels. And so the next part of this presentation, or really the end, is for me to just talk through exactly what it looks like on the survey, and then we'll get to the Q&A. But we want to make sure that we get to the survey and give people time if they're ready to fill it out. So in a second, we'll be putting out a QR code on the screen, but also we'll drop in the chat a link for you to be able to click on if you prefer that way. And on there, the first thing you're going to come to is the 10 projects. It'll look like this. It'll have all 10 projects with an opportunity on the left side to put the numbers. What we're asking is that you rank those 10 projects from 1 to 10. 1 is always the highest, and you must rank all projects, and there cannot be ties. So no 2.5 and 3.2. Everything has to have that whole number 1 through 10. So make sure that you fill it out. We want to make sure that your survey counts. So it will look like this. You'll rank it 1 through 10. On the next part, we'll then be looking at the infrastructure solutions. There's 3 options. Again, 1 is the highest, 3 is the lowest, 2 is the middle. Please rank each one. No ties. 1, 2, and 3. It'll look just like this. Sure.
So we had our first question of resharing
Get back there in a
the
second.
lowest funding level slide. So we're going to.
Sure. Well,
that
it's
better?
going to come up, I think, in
Yep.
a second.
Okay.
The third part, sorry, is the level funding levels, and we'll rank it 1 to 4 this time, because there's 4 levels. And on this next one, I think you'll see that low funding level. This summarizes all of those slides. I think it's all the information. There's nothing missing, just written a bit smaller. So you can see no new funding. You can see the low level funding, anywhere between $280 to $335 per year. That's the $33.6 million for full day kindergarten and some improvements. And so again, you're gonna rank them 1 through 4. No ties, no decimal points, just 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the QR code. Again, you can use with your phone if you have your phone right near you. You can also, I think now in the chat has been dropped the link, so you can look in the chat for the link. Yep, I see it there. Thank you. In order to take the survey. So I'll leave this slide up in case you're using the QR code, but also you have the chat, and we'll start looking at the Q&A. I'm going to move over and bring it back to Dr. Gore.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jason. So thank you so much. We've gotten some great questions throughout the presentation. It's not too late if you want to add additional questions that we will be happy to address. I'm going to start with this one. Has there been any talk from the state to give districts any funding with the mandate for full day kindergarten? Unfortunately, no. There is a full day kindergarten task force that has been assembled as part of this legislation, and their report is their interim report is due soon. But we have no real indication that there's going to be any funding available for districts like Mount Prospect. We're certainly hopeful, but that is not a likely outcome. We had another question. Where would the new Lincoln School be located, and what is the estimated timeline of the project if approved?
So, and you can definitely view that in our board packet from June 13th. Thank you. The new Lincoln School would be just, right now we're looking at just west of the narrow hallway. So kind of in that parking lot that's just west near the field there. And anticipated timeline, I'm actually looking at Alan to make sure I have the right answer. I want to say that it would take, well, I'll let you answer.
Hi, good evening. We think the new school at Lincoln would take approximately 2 years. I think it'd be a little bit less than that, recognizing this construction would take place both during the summer and during the school year. And our plan allows for safe construction and to minimize disruption during the school year. So both can be done possibly. This was a real point of emphasis from some of the earlier community meetings. People were concerned about where are the students going to be during construction and can it be maintained on site? And that's a real charge that we're happy we're able to meet.
And I'll add in that everything, we actually asked the architects to make sure that they worked all of these options out so that students would stay in the buildings and be able to learn in the buildings. Construction would have to work around them. Obviously, lots done in the summer, but things that are going to be done during the school year would still not impact the students learning within the classrooms.
Thank you. All right, we had another question about construction, so I'm going to kind of summarize it and ask you guys to jump in. Can you talk a little bit about how the district would address the sprinkler systems being absent at Westbrook and Lincoln? Is that something that would require specific funding, or is it something that could be achieved regardless of any additional funding sources?
It's a pretty significant project. To add sprinklers to an existing building, as you can imagine, you have to undo the ceilings, you have to run the pipes, you have to put everything back. It's pretty disruptive. It could be done over a summer. I'm convinced it could be done successfully over the summer. We've done that before at other schools. But it's an undertaking. It's a big job. In terms of funding, it's significant, no question about it. Westbrook is approximately a $400,000 effort. At Lincoln, being a larger building, it's more than that. So it's definitely significant. It can be done by itself as a standalone project, but it would be much more efficient to do it with the other infrastructure improvements.
Great. Thank you. We had a question, I think, that kind of dovetails off of one of the previous questions about Lincoln Middle School students and the ability to avoid displacement during construction. Do you feel like there's anything else you want to add to that, or you feel like you already addressed?
No, I think, yeah, no, I'm not sure if I have anything more to add, but I can jump in and just say, yeah, that was a goal of ours for both Westbrook and Lincoln. Any of these projects would need to work around students being able to learn within their classrooms. We've talked about the fact that even on testing days, we would make sure that there's not loud noise happening, and we'd make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure everyone is staying safe.
Thank you. Can you give a little bit of information to our viewers where they can find more detailed information about these cost estimates? Are these kind of preliminary at this point? And if they're interested in learning more about that, where can they go to get that information?
I'm actually going to look at Alan for that one, if that's all right. We keep moving around here.
So the cost estimates were developed in conjunction with the school district has a construction manager, Nicholas and Associates, which is a local construction manager. And so they definitely drove the cost estimates, and it's based off of very current numbers. So we're pretty confident in the costs. Where you can see them in the board packet.
June 13th?
Yeah, the June 13th board packet. There's a graphic representation of the schemes we've talked about, and that's followed by an estimate. I think a couple things to keep in mind when looking at these is there's construction cost and there's project cost. Construction cost is really just the hard construction, really what's physically built. Project cost is everything else. So it's fees, testing services, furniture, all the other things that aren't physically built in and attached to the building. So we really tend to look at project cost as the key, because you want to know what the whole thing will cost. We don't want to be misleading and just define one, but really want it to be as comprehensive as possible.
Great. Thank you. Changing gears, we had a question from our slides related to student resources and supports. And the question really had to do with, would that include more special education and social work staff? So what we have shared this evening in this presentation and at our previous and future engagement sessions really has to do with capital improvements. We're not talking about personnel increases within these budget proposals. These would specifically be the structures and the physical spaces that would be necessary for improvements for the student learning experiences. So any sort of increases in staff would have to be from our existing staffing plan, which is something that the Board of Education regularly reviews and makes decisions on in the spring of the previous year before the subsequent school year. But it brings up a good point, because as I believe Dr. Kays mentioned earlier tonight, full day kindergarten is certainly a costly initiative in that it doesn't just require a significant financial investment in our spaces, but it also demands districts to invest into the personnel costs and programming costs for this program for forever. So it is a definite investment that we believe is important and necessary, but also one that is quite costly for the state to require by 2027. We had another question from the chat that was asking if similar surveys would be sent to Mount Prospect homes impacted by potential tax increases. And we have worked very closely with a community engagement firm, E.O. Sullivan, who has partnered with us to devise an engagement plan throughout this process. And at this point, the recommendation was really to pursue the comprehensive phone surveys with the fact that that would reach a wide swath of our stakeholder groups from within the community. But we really are looking to try to maximize as much feedback and participation as possible in a pretty short amount of time. If in July, when presentation will be made to the Board of Education from our community engagement firm, which will include a summary of the data from all of these feedback sources. At that point, really, the findings will be shared and the Board of Education will have the opportunity to reflect on the data that's presented. And if there was a desire to pursue a referendum this fall, that decision would need to be made in August. And so the turnaround is quite quick, and something that the Board of Education will be looking very closely at and deliberating on based on as much available data as possible. So I think the person that asked that is definitely understanding our desire to be very thorough and also really working closely within the requests and feedback of the community. There are some questions here about how the current flow of Lincoln impacts the contact between 6th through 8th graders. The difference of maturity in that age range is significant.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can give some different examples. So we do have wings at Lincoln. There are different spots. You know, 8th graders are in the front wing, the south side wing, the 200 wing we call it, and 7th graders are kind of in the middle of the building, and 6th graders are in the back of the building. So they are separate for the most part, but there are things like when the building was built, it was all the science labs were built next to each other, which made sense at the time. Now that means 8th graders have to walk through the building to the other side of the building to go to one of the science labs, which of course are specific rooms meant for science. So it's hard to recreate that in a different classroom. So that's just one example of not ideal. There are different common spaces, library, gyms, cafeteria that aren't that can only be gotten to through by going through one of these wings. So there are times that students are going to see each other in the halls or just walk through those different hallways. So not ideal. The Lincoln staff and the Lincoln students do a great job of figuring that out through the building, but it is not an ideal design.
Thank you. There was a question about how District 57 is pursuing alternative funding sources. For example, have we reached out to private donors who might be willing to invest in District 57? That's a great question. For initiatives like this, which really truly are in the tens of millions of dollars, we really haven't had any wealthy individuals who have contacted us about endowments. But if anyone on this call knows of anyone, we are always happy to hear from them. But all joking aside, it is a challenge to pursue private partnerships when we're talking about this level of scale. And so short of district funding from the state of Illinois, really, when we're talking about this type of cost, it's very challenging to have partnerships that are willing to make a contribution that would really offset the impact. I think it's an important point in our presentation to also point out that District 57 is largely funded through local property taxes. And so because of that, we don't really benefit from, industrial sources or corporate taxes that many of our neighboring districts are fortunate to have within their tax base. And so that's why as property owners, there's a disproportionate, responsibility and to fund the initiatives of our schools versus communities that have more corporate and industrial tax bases. And so for those of you on the call who are interested in learning more about our budgeting and how, that works at the really, granular level, I highly encourage you to attend or tune in on YouTube for our July 18th board meeting, where Dr. Kays will be forecasting the school budget for the coming school year. And we also, again, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, have opportunities such as the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee. If you want to be a part of that work, where you can really kind of look at the, specific numbers and rationale and, philosophy behind the school finance work. And also certainly reach out to me or Jason or any of us, because we're happy to have individual conversations to make sure that your specific questions are answered, the information that you're interested to know, to look historically. Any of that is something that we are happy to provide for you and make sure you have all the information you need about that topic. There was a question related about District 57 and the feeling of being behind in offering full day programming. And I can tell you that it's been very interesting, this full day kindergarten journey. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this is going to be my 14th year in District 57. And I started in the district as the principal at Westbrook. At that time, it really was pretty normal for area school districts to have part-time programming or half-day programming. What that translates to in our district is 2.5 hours for kindergarten, which would be run in the morning and then again in the afternoon for different groups of kids. In the last 3 years, that has taken a big shift with districts like 25, District 15, and several other neighboring districts making changes, Glenview District 34. These are all districts that for many years, like District 57, offered half-day programming for many of the same reasons that we do. It was financially, a huge investment to make the change to full-day programming. Space was a limitation. And in these districts, referendums were pursued and passed in order for that funding to happen for full day programming. So it is relatively recent that District 57 is suddenly become one of 2 districts in our area that will not have full day programming for kindergartners. That happened pretty quickly. And as these things go, once there's a turnover in one community, communities do not want to be behind what kids down the block who attend a different school district are getting. And I can appreciate as families come to our district, that's becoming a question they're asking. Does full day kindergarten, is that included for District 57 students? And there is growing disappointment for families that need this and expect this. So that's something that we would just want to make sure we address and we remain current. So right now, I believe that is all the questions that we have received, but we are here and we're in no rush to get off of this call. So if you have something that you're wanting to ask us, we'll give it a couple more minutes. Please, I want to just again put a plug in for a couple upcoming dates. We will have our last in-person public engagement session on Monday at Westbrook School, and that will be from 6 to 7:30 in the gym. We hope you can come, or your neighbors or friends and family who live in District 57 community can be there. We also have our next board meeting, which will be held at Fairview School in the multipurpose room on Thursday, July 18th. That starts at 7 o'clock. You can also live stream that board meeting from home or even on a vacation. That information will be shared with District 57 families as well as put on our District 57 board meetings webpage, which you can access through our website. And then, as Jason mentioned, if you go to our archived board meetings, you can go to our most recent school board meeting, which was held on June 13th. And from there, you can access not only the recording of that presentation and that entire meeting, but also the related documents that were presented to the Board of Education within the board packet. And from there, you will have, I think, a nice thorough amount of information that will help sort of contextualize many of the concepts that we shared tonight. The greatness of District 57 truly lies in the people, our families, our students, our staff, our community at large. We are so fortunate and proud to do this work. And you being part of tonight's call really reflects just the great fortune that we have to partner with such amazing stakeholders. If at any point you have questions, suggestions, or things that you need support with, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can call me anytime. My colleague Jason or any of us in the district office or at the schools, we're here to serve our community, and we'd be happy to talk with you and make sure your questions are answered. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and we hope to see you while we pass by on the District 57 4th of July float in the Mount Prospect Parade. We will be throwing candy, so make sure you see us there and wave to us. And with that, have a wonderful evening. Thanks again for being with us.